The things I enjoyed most about my PLO was the diversity. I was in a looked after children team, so not only was I working directly with those young people, it also gave me the opportunity to work with families. For example, some of the work that I was involved in was a life story work with a granny, for example, who had residence of a child. Working directly with a father, I was doing some risk assessment work with him. So that wide range of just engaging with families and with main carers as well was a good opportunity. I also had the opportunity to be involved in court work on a number of occasions, both in family proceedings and in youth court. So it was good to kind of see that end of social work as well, and it alleviated some of my, I suppose, fears after the criminal justice module, where it was the opportunity to kind of actually see that you don't always end up as a social worker on the stand giving evidence, for example. It was good to see that a lot of the negotiation and compromises with all the legal teams and families can be done outside of the formal court proceedings. So it alleviated some of my concerns, certainly seeing that and going into practice now. One of the most challenging things I found about placement was, I suppose, in cooperative service users. From my first PLO, service users were all quite willing to engage, and I didn't get that. So I had struggled coming from that participation, person-centred service user involvement ethos. It was something that I did struggle with at first. And I found it difficult. I'll give an example. I was doing a needs assessment with a young person for her transfer into the 16+ team. Now, this needs assessment is quite an extensive piece of work. It does involve sitting down with other professionals, but the main part of it is obviously sitting down with the young person. So I found it a challenge when that young person didn't engage. She had made the decision to disengage from other professionals just because of her situation at the time. So I kind of struggled with the fact that the end assessment, it had involved her in some respects, but it didn't to the extent that I would have liked. So it is something that I did, spend significant time kind of thinking about and reflecting on, and how I would try and capture her voice in that. So but one of the things that I did end up have to do because of the kind of timing of this document was work directly with those that were working with her on a day-to-day basis, and end up then sharing it with her at the end of the process. So it wasn't working in a truly participative way, but it's as best as I could do. So going into professional social work life, it is something that I do need to be mindful of, and will be reflecting on quite a bit, I suppose, in professional practice, because I guess sometimes decisions need to be made, and if people aren't on board with it, it's just how we kind of compromise, still gather the information, and I suppose try and work in partnership in some respects. But I find that a challenge, because it goes against some of the principles, I guess, that we're trying to promote in terms of partnership working, participation, and the service user's voice. One of the pieces of work that I found the most stimulating was a piece of life story work that I was doing, and it was making a life story book for a 5-year-old child. And I was doing the direct work initially with the granny who had a residence order, and it was just interesting starting the kind of piece of work, kind of talking with the granny about what life story book was, hearing about family history and sharing that. So it was really stimulating being part of that process, and hearing about some of the history, and then kind of creating this book. And probably the best bit towards the end of the piece of work was doing the direct work with the 5-year-old child as well, where we had been given over the life story book to her, and she was allowed to make it her own. So it was a really stimulating piece of work to be involved in. One tip I would give to someone going on a PLO like mine, to a looked after children time, is don't underestimate the learning. When I was allocated the placement, I wasn't disappointed, but I was a bit surprised, because I had quite similar experiences in terms of a role I'd been in before as a trainee. But I took kind of the ownership of my learning. I met with the practice teacher fairly early on after the allocation and discussed my learning needs, and that really changed the experience for me. A lot of the work was something that, it focused on my learning needs in terms of, working directly with I suppose, uncooperative service users with the youth justice interface, probation interface and the courts. So definitely don't underestimate, or I suppose play down what you're allocated on allocation day. So kind of embrace it and go with it.